Okay, guys. I see some new names in here. Welcome. Glad to have you. So you guys know how it works. What we'll do is we'll go over the new features that we're going to talk about today. And then from there, you feel free to ask any of your questions that you have or anything that you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be about the topic that we're talking about today. It can be about anything. So maybe you're working in your Totara site and you're running into something that's driving you bonkers and you want to work on that together. That's what I'm here for. So that's what we'll do. So you know, I've experienced some issues with the chat block, but you can post questions to the questions block, and then I can give you microphone access so that we can actually talk out the issue that you're having. Okay. All right, just want to do a quick yes in the question box that you guys can hear me and that you can see my screen. Woohoo, cool. Everybody's with me? Great. All right, guys, so today we're going to talk about some new audience features. It is to version 12, so if you aren't using version 12 already, or if you're thinking about upgrading to version 12, some of these new audience features may encourage you to go that direction. So we're going to take a look at those today. They're nothing super earth-shattering, but they're handy. So we're going to talk about those today. My name is Taylor Craig. I'm the Senior Platforms Consultant at Kineo. Sometimes when you join these calls, you are joined by my excellent partner in crime, Alex Carrick. He is also one of our Platforms Consultants here. So you'll either have myself or Alex, and our role at Kineo is we train. So we do training for any new employee or new people coming on board, new clients coming on board, as well as existing clients. We do additional training for them if they need it. And then we offer services like this. So the office hours every other week on Thursdays. And then we also have another resource that you guys may not be aware of called Training Hub. So that's located at traininghub.kineo.com. Definitely go and check that out if you have any questions there. All right, so what are these new audience features in version 12? There's actually 4 new development pieces that were built into version 12 surrounding audiences. So the first one is going to be user data items for audience export and purge. So what that means, if you guys are aware of back, I believe it was probably almost 2 years ago now, definitely a year ago when Europe introduced the GDPR rules and laws around that. Essentially, to put that in a nutshell, it means that people who create accounts on systems such as Totara have the right to take away their data at any time, request all of the data, and request all of that data to be purged. So they've added the I'm a member of certain audiences, I want to be pulled out of those audiences type of purge. So that one we'll take a look at. Also, there's an authentication method audience rule. So there's quite a few, there's 2 new audience rules, authentication method audience rule, and then also a certification-based audience rule. Those are pretty cool because you can now build an audience based on someone's authentication method. So if you maybe want to send them to a specific dashboard, if they are authenticating via email-based self-registration versus they are authenticating via single sign-on, you may want to send those people 2 different directions. You can now do that. So that's now core. Certification-based audience rules. So we've always had audience rules based on course completion, and we've always had audience-based rules based on program completion, but we didn't have one based on certification completion. So now we do. So that's in there as well. And then the one that is my favorite and the one we were just going to talk about, but I didn't feel like it was enough to talk about today, is the report content restriction by audience. That one's super cool. So we're going to take a look at that as well. All right, so enough of me jibber-jabbing looking at a slide. Let's go take a look at what we're talking about as far as what we got going. So underneath, you now have, it's under user data management, and you can actually create different types of exports. And I've got to go to export types as well as purge types. So export type, that means we're going to give people the ability to export X, Y, and Z about themselves. It's not deleting any of that information, but they're able to export it, they're able to see it, they're able to maybe potentially import that into other systems. So that's what our export types are. And you can add a new export type by clicking that button. Yesterday, it took me a good 10 minutes to find that button. It's in a weird spot. To me, it should be down here, but it's up here. So if you're looking to do that, that's where it's located. But let's just take a look at what this one looks like. I set up an audience export. Essentially, all we're doing is we're giving the user the ability to export their own data, and then we're choosing what they can export. So you'll see here, and I believe I've talked about this in a previous office hours back around the time when GDPR came out. So if you want to look at that one, the title of that recording would be something along the lines of GDPR compliance. We can potentially check all of these options. It's a lot of options, but here's Totara audiences. So this is now new, and users can actually do this. But you'll notice here it does give me a nice little information bubble, and it says when purging, the user will be removed from any dynamic audiences. However, after purging is complete, they may be added back again if they still meet the criteria. So that's a nice little warning that it gives us there. So just be aware of that. Okay, and that's for the purge. So you can do the same for export. You can do the same for purging. So essentially, you can purge that data about people, but as it says, is if they still meet that criteria, it's still going to put them back in that audience. So you want to make sure that they no longer meet the criteria as well when you're doing those purges. Okay, so that is going to be our first one. I always have to pull this over so I don't forget what I'm talking about. The next one's going to be audience rules, which is nice. So let's go here. I'm going to go to related pages. For those of you who aren't familiar with version 12, you're maybe in version 11 or maybe 9. If you're in 2.9, don't freak out. You're not super behind the curve. We always like to point that out. Totara's numbering went from Totara 2.9 to version 9. So you're not incredibly behind if you're on 2.9, okay, or earlier even. Okay, so in version 12, they give you a nice little block now called related pages that's going to take you to blocks that are areas in the administrative menus that may be similar to what it is that you're looking at. So it gave me a quick jump over to audiences to take a look at that. So we're going to add a new audience. We're going to look at the 2 new rules. It's obviously for dynamic. Save our changes, and then we're going to add a rule, and there are 2 new ones. So it's authentication method right here. So you can do authentication type, and notice it will pull through any of the different authentication types. You have the equal to or not equal to option, so that's going to grab and pull people based on how they authenticated on your site. So a good use case for this, kind of as I mentioned earlier, for those of you who maybe join me a bit later, a good use case for this is to push people to different dashboards based on how they're accessing your site, right? So that's one way that you could utilize that. Also think about reporting. You could potentially filter reports based on people in certain audiences based on their authentication method. So how are people coming to your site? And then what are those people doing when they get there? So that's something to consider as well. And then the other one is going to be based on completion. So it's under here under learning. Okay, and now we have certification status as well as certification completion date. Okay, so we have that one as well. So you've got these 2 options. So if we do status, you'll see here you can find the actual certification, and then you've got a couple of things here that you can do. Certification status, currently certified, currently expired, never certified. Assignment status, are they assigned or are they not assigned at the moment? So that's a pretty cool and pretty complex audience rule that you can set there. You can also set a combination of those things. So that's a really nice feature there that you have now with certification. So you get that one with certification status, and then also certification completion date, which is going to be similar to what we've already seen and what we're already familiar with programs. Okay, so that's going to not be super earth-shattering for you if you've used this with programs. Okay. All right, so those are going to be the 2 new audience rules surrounding or new additions to audiences with version 12. Now let's go take a look at reports. For those of you who've maybe never seen a version 12 instance at this time, navigation and administration, all that administration navigation, it's changed. It's kind of moved a little bit, but everything's still there. You haven't lost anything. It's all still there, but it just looks a little bit different. So underneath core platform, we go to reports. And we're just going to create, let's do a course completion report. There we go. It's actually just searching for one, so we probably already have one. I actually see one there. All right, so here's a test one. We'll go in here and read, because we're really just wanting to look at the content tab. So this is a really nice new feature that I really, really like. So it's, if you remember in working with Totara, content is the information that you want to see. So that's the data that you want to pull in that report. So that's your content tab. Your access tab is going to be who can see the data. But the content tab is going to be, again, the data that we're pulling. And there is a new section right here, show records by audience, which is really, really cool. So we can come in here and we can say, I want to show the records based on just that audience. So basically, you can now create audience or reports on a select audience. So if you use audiences really heavily on your site, this may be something that you find of interest. And then save those changes. And I don't know if Zach's dynamic audience has anybody in it, but we'll view the report and see. It doesn't. Let's go see here. Let's use, surely dynamic test has something in it. Guys, I apologize for the background noise. I don't know if you can hear it, but I made the mistake of turning on the Shark vacuum cleaner thingy before starting the session, and it has coincidentally found a phone charger cord and is making all kinds of nice background noise. All right, there we go. So this one did have 444 records, so it did pull all the data back only for that particular audience. Now you're going to notice we see a lot of repetition here. So apparently these people are enrolled in lots of courses, and it's a course completion report, so there may not be 444 people in the audience, but those people in that audience have 444 records. They're enrolled total in 444 courses. So that's where we're getting that. Okay, so really kind of a nice new feature. I'm really excited about this one. I can see a lot of use cases for it in the future as far as being able to pull exactly the data that you're looking for. And typically when you have a content option, then that kind of gives you more filterability, right, in your filters. So all things to consider and all things to be excited about for version 12. So that, guys, is all I've got for you. Kind of short and sweet. But hey, it's to the point, and I leave the floor open to you guys. So any questions that you have, feel free to pop those in the question box. And then if you need a mic, I'm happy to give you a mic as well. Super excited to see new names in here. This is cool. I'm happy to see the names I'm used to as well.